Daddy eats lots. Daddy eats lots. Daddy eats lots. Munch, munch, munch.
Hello and welcome to Daddy Eats Last, where we discuss the challenges of being a man in modern society and whatever the hell that even means. I'm Kane, and joining me today to chat man stuff are Ryan and Maddie. Firstly, gents, how was the weekend?
Hot and sticky up here in Brisbane, boys. Looking forward to some cooler weather, hopefully, just around the corner. We had my wife's sister come back from a couple of years in the UK today, so we caught up with her, which is great. The kids really missed her, so good old Auntie Kate is back in town. So that was the highlight of our weekend.
There you go. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, very good. We were up in Creswick, just outside of Ballarat, first Saturday night, and came back and had a very relaxing Sunday, a bit of brunch, and discovered the cheapness of Audi German beer. So it's quite a good day.
Can't go too far wrong with that. Well, we did chores around the home today after going to the beach this morning with a little fella, and then he did a dump on the potty this afternoon, so we got to go and have ice cream. That was his reward. He laid a cable on the potty. So that's dad life right there. We all got to go and celebrate the laying of cable in toilet with chocolate ice cream. So go us.
Everyone wins there. Well done. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Where does that fit on the dad bribe scale there?
Oh, it's been brewing. Brewing's probably not the right term to use for either what he did or the reward as such. But it's been brewing for a while. He went through a phase of doing it on the potty, and then he was like, I do it in the nappy, and then he was making a joke of it. So I kind of laid down the law to him the other day. I was like, oh, okay, blah 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 blah. If you can't do it, you can't do this. But also, if you do it, you can get this reward. So he got the reward pretty quickly. So go him. Long may it continue, because the sooner he gets out of nappies and you have to deal with that, all the better.
Indeed.
Anyway, that's something I did not have to worry about 10 years ago. And 10 years ago is what we're discussing tonight. What we were doing 10 years ago, work-wise, relationship-wise, where we were living, all those sort of things. So, an interesting one. 10 years goes remarkably quickly. I'm turning 40 this year, so 10 years for me will be pretty much when I was turning 30. So, a whole different time. I kind of look the same. I still have the same amount of hair, albeit with a much shorter haircut. But, gents, 10 years ago, what were you doing? Ryan, you were about 15 or something, weren't you?
I probably looked 15. I was turning 19 10 years ago. So I turned 18 6 months prior to where we are now. And what was I doing? Well, I enjoyed turning 18, let's put it that way. And then I had just started studying. I'm pretty sure I just started studying physiotherapy. So first year uni. After a first year uni of engineering in the Australian Defence Forces. So very different even 1 year beforehand. So yeah, very different to what is 28-year-old Ryan with all this adult responsibility and people management and businesses and career and all this proper stuff. I was probably this time 10 years ago exactly on a Sunday afternoon sinking many, many beers.
You mentioned the Defence Forces. Well, that was obviously slightly before the 10-year period. How did you get involved in that?
Yeah, I'm from an Air Force family, so all through growing up we sort of moved around in that, and my parents were not necessarily in a position to financially assist with university. So an opportunity came up where I did get a scholarship to the Australian Defence Force University. Got shipped off there at 17 years and 2 months. Did all the training and bits and pieces. Also did engineering instead of now that I work in health and manage health businesses. And yeah, after a period of that, realised that I didn't want to work with computers. I wanted to work with people. So left the Defence Forces, and it's a great time. Really learnt a lot in Canberra. Grew up a lot, but moved back to WA and studied physiotherapy. And 10 years later, here we are.
Why physio? Was there a particular reason you chose physio over something else? Transitioning away from engineering into, I guess, healthy-based stuff. Was there a reason you chose physio?
Yeah, so I wanted to, while I was in engineering, I realized that I'd probably be doing a fair bit of work on or with computers. Albeit I do a fair bit of work now with computers in management. But yeah, so I kind of went, engineering made sense back then because as a 17-year-old, I did well in school with mathematics, physics, and all that kind of stuff. Then realized that didn't necessarily want to do that. Wasn't a big fan of reading a lot. So that ruled out law, and terrible with blood. So that ruled out medicine. And then realized that I like playing a lot of sports. So that sort of wanted to work with people, like playing a lot of sports. And then I did want to do business. But unfortunately, I was influenced by, I suppose, many people back then when you're 17 and don't really know what you're going to do with life. And everyone's telling you you're going to make all these big decisions, which for anyone who is 17 and a male, you definitely don't. But yeah, I was basically like, told that, hey, you got this great score. It'd be a shame for someone with a score like that to just go and do business, which I think was 70 to get in. So you should use this score. So I sort of listened to that, and then yeah, Alla went, well, people, health, sport, physio, did that one.
Ticks a lot of the boxes. So you moved from Canberra back home to Perth roughly 10 years ago. Were you living at home back in Perth?
Yeah, so I moved out of home to ADFA, Australian Defence Force Academy, over in Canberra. I moved back to Perth, and then within 12 months, I was back out of home. So I also went to Curtin University, which was 43 kilometres away from where home was. So it was a bit of a trek. So I did sort of my first year at uni at home, and then after that, I thought the travel hours would be better spent working behind a bar and a couple of other jobs, and somehow scrapping together some rent, and yeah, moved into a share house probably 10 years ago.
Wow, there you go. How do you find share housing, moving from, I guess, going from home back to going to home, going to university in Canberra, which is away from friends and people you know, to then coming back to Perth and share housing around people? How did university go for you there?
Share housing was pretty easy. Compared to the military, it was very easy. So I think because I'd had that stint where, you know, you do go and do all your basic training and everything like that. And then, yeah, we were living and working kind of in shared dorm rooms, I suppose, in ADFA. And then going back home, when I went back home, I actually remember a pretty frank conversation with my mum, who was fantastic about it all. She basically said, well, there's two ways to do this. You've lived out of home. We can either basically bring you back in and look after everything, or you can pretty much just pay board, look after your own food, and take the back room, and pretty much, yeah, if you're here for dinner, good. If you're not, sort yourself out and look after yourself. So that was actually really good, because I was kind of, while sort of living at home, still getting a lot of leeway. And then it was always my plan to sort of be out pretty young, I suppose, to sort of help just with help not put a financial strain on my parents, I guess. And then share house, I lucked out pretty well. I was 5 k's away from uni, so I was able to ride my bike in, and had some pretty cool housemates. A couple of years later, we turned over a housemate, and then the 2 new housemates got together, and that was a shit house 6 months, but that was about 8 years ago, not 10 years ago. So for the first 2 years of my share housing experience, it was fantastic.
So 10 years ago was kind of peak Ryan.
Yeah, 19 was pretty good. Had a good year.
There you go. Hey, you, Matthew, 10 years ago, you're now interstate. So I imagine 10 years ago you were not interstate.
That's right. Yeah, I was down in Melbourne, living the life. no kids, wasn't married. I was engaged. I think 2009 was the year I got engaged to Kim. But yeah, I think 2009 I was working at the same place as you, Kane. And work was fantastic. It was, you'd work out during the week. Friday night was always a great time out. And then Saturday, my mates outside of work would come into town, and we'd go out as well. So most Sundays were spent probably not feeling too good, but having a long time girlfriend and fiance, we had to do some activities on a Sunday. But yeah, we're living in
those.
No. I wasn't even thinking of that actually. Yeah, living in, I think, South Bank we were. But that was the year we eventually moved back to mum and dad. So we decided that, our time in the city had sort of come to an end, and we wanted to sort of move out to the suburbs. And we thought the best way to do that was to move back to my parents' house and start saving as hard as we could. So that meant they were about an hour and 20-minute train ride away from the city. So there was, a lot of early mornings and sort of late commutes, over 2.5 hours a day doing that. But I mean, it's just what we had to do back then to try and, save some extra coins. So, yeah, that was enjoyable. We were there for probably a year and a half. And it was at the time where trying to buy a house, we went to auction after auction. We spent a good 6 to 9 months just going to auctions and just realizing, wow, this is what the auction game was all about. And yeah, eventually we got something in March of 2010. So most of 2009 was spent house hunting, a lot of weekends. And of course, because mum and dad live an hour and 10 out of the city, where we wanted to live was sort of northern Melbourne suburbs. So McLeod, Watsonia, Greensboro sort of area, which again is close to an hour away from where mum and dad were. So most Saturdays were spent doing a lot of travelling. Kids weren't even on the road. Oh, sorry, Ken.
No, I was just trying to think, 10 years ago, was this roughly around the time you started sleeping in my office on Friday or Saturday nights if you had a really big night to save on a taxi fare home?
That's correct, yeah. There was no way known I was going to be paying, $100 every Friday night to go back to mum and dad. So every Friday night, a mate who would sometimes come in from the area of mum and dad, he'd drive in, he'd park his car in the basement of the building we worked at. We'd go and have a Friday night raz, and then meander back to the office with some Hungry Jacks or whatever late night feed we could find. Sometimes with pizza, stink out the office, and clean up Saturday morning. And away I'd go and get a train home or get a lift back with my mate. But yeah, a lot of Friday nights were spent sleeping in your office, Kane. Thank you for that.
It's okay. I have no sense of smell, so like the leftover decaf, the double bacon cheeseburgers were kind of irrelevant to me. But I swear to God, people walk into my office on Monday morning and just go, "What the flip has gone on the weekend?" I go, "I don't know," because you always clean up, so it always looked pristine, but it always smelled like two sweaty guys had slept in there all night.
Of course, the aircon isn't on over the weekends in those buildings, and obviously you can't open a window, and we'd always sleep with the door shut in case someone would come in early Saturday morning to do some work. So
yeah, I think that one time it was me, and that's how I kind of found out that you were sleeping in there. I walked in on a Saturday morning to do some work at maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and there's two guys laid out on my floor.
I've forgotten about that. Yeah.
So you don't do that sort of thing anymore where you work now?
No, long gone. I live about 10 minutes from work now, which is nice. But the Friday night raz is well and truly dead and buried.
A lot can change in 10 years.
It was a good chapter.
When did you move into state, or when did you move to Queensland, where your wife's parents are?
Yeah, so Mia was born in June of 2012, and September of the same year we sort of moved up. So we had her, spent a few months in Melbourne, then decided it was time to go. So September 2012, we've been here for. So even that's creeping up to 7 years this year. Time really does fly.
Well, 10 years goes really fast. So thinking about it today, like when I floated this topic, I can't even really remember that much about 10 years ago. I remember that I was working in the same place that you were working in, Matt. really hating my job at that point of time. I enjoyed the people that I worked with, but the actual work that I was doing was getting pretty repetitive. I think I might have even almost been in the tax consulting division there and just moving into another division. So trying to cross a bridge into a different division was difficult. The people I was working with were great, but the work kind of sucked. I was living in the northern suburbs of Melbourne in a house, which was the first house I bought. Again, hours sort of there and back. I wasn't great in the suburbs, albeit away from kind of family and friends as well. So I was finding a transition around that a difficult sort of thing. And yeah, 10 years ago, my life was kind of, no, I don't say it sucked, but it wasn't the happiest time I've had. But now 10 years later, things are significantly better. So it's amazing how much you can get done in 10 years and how much things can change in 10 years from where you were 10 years ago. Ryan in Perth studying physio to running multiple businesses now based in an apartment in Melbourne, and Maddie being based in Queensland now, where 10 years ago you were sleeping. I think you were based in my office.
I was based in the office, yeah. I just wonder, Ryan, with you, what would Ryan Ebert of 18, if he could see himself as Ryan Ebert of 28, would he? I think he'd be very pleased with where you are, but what do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting because I was talking about this with TK when we were talking about it this afternoon when we floated this topic. And it's that thing of, like, she was saying, you know, being a psychologist has a lot more insight into this stuff than I do. But a lot of people overestimate what they can do in a year or two and underestimate what they can do in a long term, like 5-10 years. And we were having a chat about it. And I was basically like, if I can hit 30 living in the city, because being in Perth, I think Perth is the best place in the world if you're over 40 and under 20. In between that, not so much. Sorry to anyone who's listening over from Perth, between 20 and 40. But for me personally, it wasn't. Having grown up sort of the first 14 years, Sydney or thereabouts, it was a very big change when I moved over to Perth. But yeah, when I was sitting there thinking back on 18-year-old Ryan, what did he want? And he was like, well, if I could be living in the city, like say in Melbourne, driving a BMW and earning 100 grand or more by 30, I figured my life was made. Like, I was like, my life is set. Fast forward 10 years and all of those things have come true. And my life certainly is not set. So I was kind of, thinking TK was asking the same thing, where she goes, 10 years ago. And I was like, no, that was literally it 10 years ago. And she's like, well, you've done that now. So what the hell is the next 10 years? And I was like, oh, shit, I'm going to have to think of something different. But I suppose one of the things that I wouldn't have expected 10 years ago is how it happened. Like 10 years ago, I was studying engineering, expecting that would be the pathway. I'd do that. I'd get a job. I'd do this. I'd probably go work for a fly in, fly out WA company after the time in the military, all these, like, I had a full plan. And unfortunately, I'm one of those weird and wired people like that and highly ambitious. And I had this full plan. And, by 30, this is all the stuff that I'd done. And absolutely, if you had to rate like a 0 to 10 on that plan, I was an absolute fuck up, but still got the plan in one way, which or another. So yeah, in a really weird way, the experiences of, if you told me that I would have gone overseas, I would have done all these things, I would have started a business, I would have failed a business, I would have stuffed up some many things, I would have but in the end, it all would have resulted into this. I actually, had a bit of a moment today where I was like, shit, 18-year-old Ryan would be stoked with how everything's come about. Just absolutely not in the way that that was expected. And I think that's
a nice surprise.
I think that's just part of it. It was a very nice surprise. But I think the big thing for me was, really reevaluating and looking at the next 10 years is to just kind of just be a little less harsh on myself, or just, any guys out there in general, just to kind of give ourselves a little bit of a break and just enjoy the ride a bit more. Like, if I could go back 10 years, and it makes me sound really old, but already, if I could go back 10 years, I'd just be like, just enjoy it a bit more, because it turns out pretty good. You don't think it will, but it turns out pretty good. So just sort of have a bit more fun along the way, rather than stressing about the little things that, I mean, I couldn't even tell you what I was stressing. I was probably stressing about how to afford a beer 10 years ago. But yeah, I guess that's it.
What about you, Matthew? What would 10-year younger Matthew think of where you've ended up?
That is a very good question.
I have to reverse it on you.
Yeah, no, I was expecting it to come.
Responsible dad of 3, no longer
Yeah.
sleeping on the office floor.
I never would have thought I would have had 3 kids. I knew we'd have kids one day, and I thought 2 was going to be the magic number, but somehow we snuck 3 in. So they'd probably be surprised about that. But I think 26-year-old Matt would be happy on the family front. Like, things are going really well. Got 3 beautiful kids. Got a great wife. Life up here is pretty amazing. He'd probably score himself down maybe on the career aspect of things. Maybe a bit more stuff. I was studying at the time. I was doing a Bachelor of Commerce, but for whatever reason, I really wasn't enjoying it. It wasn't sort of coming naturally to me, the accounting world. Even though I've been working in an accounting firm for so long, I thought that would be a natural progression, start doing a course in that. But it just sort of never eventuated after X amount of units. So I don't know. I probably should have, yeah. When you look back and go 10 years, wow, I could probably knocked out 2 degrees in that time. And the fact that I sort of haven't, followed it up as much as I probably should, yeah, I'll probably mark myself down there. But yeah, on the flip side, the family side, yeah, I think I'd rate myself pretty well there.
I'm sure you've also learned a lot of other stuff through the duration. Like, I didn't know until last week you could cut a tissue box and get a tissue out without any caring. Changed my word in 1 week.
That's true. I mean, yeah, a lot of life lessons, I guess, I've learned. Yeah. Little useless things like that came, tissue box cutting.
Patent
but
pending.
no, I mean, again, like in the area of that kind of stuff, like building things, and I never would have thought I'd learn how to do that kind of stuff. So that's, yeah.
You have a cubby you can now sleep in instead of my office.
That's true.
and patent pending tissue design.
Yeah,
that's right. A few things in the pipeline there. So. What about you, Kane? Would the 30-year-old Kane be happy?
Yeah, I think definitely. I feel a lot happier than I would have back then. I felt not the weight of the world, but just felt sort of, seemed to be really angry for no reason, or probably there was reasons, but I didn't know what the reasons were at the time. So I feel like I'm a lot happier now, and I certainly probably just a lot happier in the way that I carry myself and what I'm doing now. Have a bit more freedom and control over what I do and how I spend my life. So I think 30-year-old Kane, while almost 40-year-old Kane is significantly different, I think he'd be pretty chuffed at how it's going at the moment.
Did you guys, like, one of the things that I did think by now, I thought, all right, back, not to make you guys feel too old, but 18-year-old Ryan thought 28 was, 2 good years left, and then life's over. And I thought, all right, well, I'd probably be a dad by 28, which hasn't eventuated yet. I do have 7 months to become 29, so it's definitely not going to eventuate whilst I'm 28. But yeah, I thought, that would probably be one front that I would have done by now, which I haven't. But I was wondering, did you guys have any? For me, 30 was like a big number when I was 16 through to about 18, and they're like, you've got to pick your subjects and you got to do all this shit for uni and that kind of thing. So I was like, all right, by 30, what do I want to do? And I wanted to have changed my life circumstances a bit, and hence the 3 things that came out for me. But Did you guys have anything 10 years ago where you were like, or especially, I guess you came coming up to a milestone that is 40? Did you have anything targeted that you were like, I want to do this or that? Or was it really like, I'll just let it go and see what happens? And I guess I ask because, yeah, I'm looking at the next decade to come, I suppose.
I didn't. I was working at an accounting firm at sort of at age 30 that I'd been working at since I was sort of age 21. So I'd been there for the best part of 9 years. I really had no intention of, I had no real fixed intention of what I wanted to do next. Since that time, I've changed jobs twice, started a business on the back of just nothing, and that's turned out okay. So I didn't really ever expect to be running an accounting firm business. I always wanted to run a business of some description. So I guess I've done that. But outside of that, I never really had anything at age 30 or even just before age 30. I was like, oh, I've got to do this by X date. Even the kids thing, it was something which was up in the air for me for a while. Like, it wasn't something I had a burning desire to have, but then that changed. But it was never a fixed goal that I had to tick off. So I'm probably pretty lucky in that I don't often have those sort of fixed goals of things that I really like to do. And I just kind of stumble into things and go, okay, that's great. But also means I'm seldom disappointed because I don't have things I have to tick off. So I'm often not sort of like, oh, I haven't ticked that off, or I haven't done X, I haven't done Y, because I never had X or Y on my list.
Yeah, you're certainly not your harshest critic. We were having the chat today and TK was just like, shit, I'm worried about your next 10 years if you don't get them. Expecting a solid midlife crisis spiral into some mental health problems, but we'll see how we go.
That you, Matthew?
Yeah, I'm probably another bad example, Ryan. Back when I was 26, just got engaged. There was no real, kids weren't definitely really on the radar. They were spoken about, obviously, but I don't even think I wanted kids at the time. Now I've got 3, yeah. I was in no rush to get married either. It's only really, like, I didn't have any sort of goals or things that I wrote down that I wanted to achieve either by a certain date or 30 or 35 or 40, that kind of thing. But I tell you, it's only since being involved in this podcast and listening to a few of the things you do, Ryan, in terms of goal setting and, at the end of the year, evaluate how your year went, that, yeah, I'm really going to start doing that kind of stuff because I think it's fantastic idea. And you can, you don't have to be too harsh on yourself, but you do keep yourself a little bit more accountable that way. So I'm a bit, not regretful, but I sort of wish, I had known that back when I was 26 to sort of make goals in the sort of the way Mr. Ebert makes his goals.
I think you touched on a really good point there, though, Matt. Like, it's a balance for Ryan going forward of making goals, but also being able to cut himself some slack, and that's the important thing. The balance for you going forward, Mr. Ebert.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely glad to hear that, Matt, and hopefully at least leads to some exciting and aspirational things. But I'm very envious of those that are wired a bit differently. And I suppose that, going back to the reason of this whole podcast is just to normalize differences, especially modern men today. Like, what are you supposed to be as a guy today? It's sort of left, right, up, down, and who knows. But I've always been envious of my brother's very much like go with the flow, and he's currently in Canada at the moment on a 2-year ski visa, pouring beers and completely chilling out, and very opposite to my I guess my ambitious empire building self. But yeah, I suppose what I'm getting at is I'm envious of that, and I know that I've had friends that are like, as of now, and I've been fortunate enough to, might sound a bit arrogant, but have a little bit of success by a young age, and they kind of go, oh, that's really good. And I'm sort of envious of people that are a bit lighter and a bit easier on themselves, because it can be a mental battle both ways, whether you've got an expectation of, hey, in 10 years I should have done this, or should be at this level and I expect to be, or looking back and go, well, maybe I could have done that. And I suppose, yay or nay, if you've had a few good times on the way, and you've had, I think my mum said, if you can find something that you do that's 51% good and 49% not so good, you're actually doing better than most people on this planet. So, I suppose if you can find 10 years where you look back and go, more than 51% was pretty sweet, and it's probably been a good 10 years.
Absolutely agree. And that's a pretty good place to finish up this evening. It wraps up for this week nicely with a little bow on it. We'll put this in the vault and we'll revisit this in 10 years' time and see how we've changed then. For everyone listening, do subscribe to Daddy Eats Last on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave a review. Also, tell your mates about the podcast, especially if they are dudes. Most of all, thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week for another episode, or should I say serving, of Daddy Eats Last. How's that for a dad joke? Catch you next week.
Bye bye. Bye bye.